I really am delighted to be here. I'm honored to be here. This is work that I have been preparing to do for most of my life, and it is, despite the topic, which some people think is morbid or difficult, or really couldn't we talk about something more pleasant? I find that this work is something that brings me intimacy in my relationships and joy, because I know it also brings freedom for a lot of people once they've had the conversation. At the Conversation Project, we've asked a lot of people. I've done workshops all over the country, and very often people tell me how nervous they are to have a conversation with someone about their wishes. And after we do this process that I'm going to invite you to participate in with me this afternoon, people use words like they feel so relieved, they feel so happy, they feel that, oh, Julie was talking about this workshop you're going to do about how to approach dying without fear. Let's work on that today. Just by talking about it, I think we are beginning to enter into from my point of view, one of the most profound spiritual practices that there is, which is contemplating the reality of our mortality and being courageous enough and compassionate enough to have these conversations with the people who matter most to us about what matters most to us. So thank you for joining in tonight. Or I'm sorry, I'm on the East Coast and I keep thinking it's evening, but it's just afternoon for you. So thank you for joining today. And I know that life is busy and some of us have had to rush to get on to our Zoom. And I really would like to invite you to start becoming fully present to our time together. So I invite you to join me for just a 2-minute sit. Let us just listen for the bell and follow its sound. You can close your eyes, find your seat, and let's just take a few conscious breaths together for about 2 minutes. Will you join me? Thank you. So I'm going to be sharing my screen with you on this call. Julie mentioned that you might have a starter kit workbook, a starter guide that you may have had an opportunity to download from theconversationproject.org. It's a free starter guide. We'll be talking about all the starter guides that the Conversation Project makes available to you in English and a variety of other languages. But if you didn't have a chance to do that, don't worry, because the PowerPoint I'm going to be sharing with you on the screen will go through most of these questions, and you can just have a notebook or a piece of paper to write on. And I do invite you to write, because what we're going to be doing is getting started. People find that they feel like there are a lot of obstacles to getting started, and what we're all about is helping you to just get started. You have thoughts in your head, you have feelings in your heart, you have sensations in your body. What we want to do today is help you get them from your heart and your head out through your mouth. And some of the ways that we can do that to warm up is by writing. So during the course of this 2 hours, where I'm going to speak, I'm going to share some questions with you for reflection. We're going to pause in silence for a period of time so that you have time to write things down. They can be phrases, words, full sentences, okay? And then there will be an opportunity to share in the chat from time to time what some of your answers are. No one has to, but I find that when we have other people sharing some of their thoughts, it gives us new ideas about what we might be considering as well. So I'm going to begin sharing my screen, and there we go. So I've been working with the conversation. I began working with the Conversation Project. Oh, I don't remember. I think it was 2012, 2013, around there. And I feel sometimes as though I have been preparing to do this work with the Conversation Project my whole life. You should know something about me in addition to what Julie shared, which is I grew up in a household with 4 grandparents living in our household. My mother was indeed a saint. She took care of those folks, and my brothers and I had a chance to watch what it looks like to age and to die in very different ways through our grandparents. And it's something that has made a big impact on me, probably led me to my first career in nursing, and then to ministry, and then to working with the Conversation Project. So the Conversation Project was started by a woman named Ellen Goodman, and I'm going to tell a couple of stories along the way because I think it helps us understand the value of this. And Ellen was a world famous journalist, actually. She wrote columns, was syndicated. She was very close to her mom. And Ellen used to say that we talked about absolutely everything except one thing, which is what mattered most to her mom when it came to end of life. Her mom developed Alzheimer's disease. And over the course of her decline, Ellen kept saying to herself, I forgot, I never asked her about certain things. So that when Ellen was faced with making decisions on behalf of her mother, she kind of was kicking herself a little bit, like, why didn't I ask? Why didn't I ask? But she always tried to think about what her mom would have wanted. Would she have wanted to be treated one more time for pneumonia? Would she want to be hospitalized and undergo a hip replacement? Things like that. When her mom died, Ellen thought about their experience together and thought to herself, I don't want anyone else to be in this don't know situation with their loved ones. And she started the Conversation Project. Talking matters because we can't plan for every possible scenario of what our end would look like. But we can share from the point of view of where you are right now in your life, at your level of health and well-being and cognitive ability. You can share what matters most to you with the people who matter most to you, with the people who may be someday in a position to make decisions for you in the event that you cannot speak for yourself. And conversely, you may be that person who has to make decisions for someone in the event that they can't speak for themselves. And you're going to want to know what they would want, right? So talking is what creates the foundation of a care plan built on our values. And I think this is particularly important for the people participating today, because not everyone in your circle, your intimate circle of family and friends, may understand the grounding of your values within your religious tradition. So you're going to want to be able to share that in a way that's meaningful and understandable for people, right? And talking about it, not always all at once, sitting down, let me tell you everything about my Buddhist practice and what happens at the end of life. But you might be able to say to your folks, I do have this. I have this wonderful pamphlet that was produced by Transitional Life, which explains the things that will be most important to me at the time of my dying and at the time of my death. So I hope if you haven't already obtained one of these for you and for your practice, you'll be sure to get one. I found it tremendously helpful and very thorough and very well done. So not only is talking important, but listening is important. You know, I want to applaud each and every person who's come on to this call, because what we know from doing the work that we've been doing for so many years is that a lot of people think it's really important to talk about your wishes for end-of-life care. In fact, we did surveys, and 70% of Americans think, oh, this is really, really important. We should really, really do this. And as we know, like right now, 70% of Americans don't agree on most things, but they all agree on this. However, when we ask people to raise their hands or take these surveys and say, how many people have had these conversations, have chosen a healthcare proxy, have written down their directives, just 30% of Americans have done this. So we have a big gap to fill, and I'm glad that you're here to help us narrow that gap a little bit tonight. When I say that listening matters too, you know that. We can talk and talk and talk at people, but we're going to talk about a conversation, which means you may be wanting to share your wishes, and that we're going to talk about how you might go about doing that. And you want to also be listening for what other people's wishes are, right? So the people you're going to be talking to in your life are people you may want to be sharing this with. And sometimes that might start with just a friend, maybe not someone who's going to be the person making decisions for you or on your behalf, or vice versa. But it's a good way to practice talking with others that are maybe not the most intimate people. And this is what we're about, helping people share their wishes for care through the end of life. Because our ultimate goal, after all, is not only a good death, but a good life to the very end. This is a quote from Dr. Atul Gawande, and some of you may have read his story, his book called Being Mortal, and may have even been a focus of one of these presentations. I wonder if you remember a very particular story that he recounts in his book. I'm going to share it briefly with you now because I want to illustrate why conversations matter. And he tells a story on his friend, a colleague, Susan Block, who worked at a hospital in the Boston area. And she's a palliative care doc. And every day, what she did was talk to people about their wishes for care. What do they want to do now that they knew what was happening with their physical bodies? What mattered most to them? The quality of life. Do they want more sedation because the pain was too much? Or do they want less because they wanted to stay more conscious? Things like that. Well, her father was 74 years old, and he had developed a growth on very close to his spine and needed surgery. And it was a very risky surgery. It could leave him paralyzed. It could result in death. You know, they always make you sign that thing if you have surgery, like one of the outcomes might be. So she realized, though, her dad was about to have surgery the next day, but she had never had this conversation with her own father, and she was his healthcare proxy, the person who makes decisions for him if he can't speak. And, you know, during surgery, you can't speak. When you first come out of surgery, you can't speak. So she went to the hospital that night before surgery, and she sat down with her dad, and she said, I need to know, Dad, should something happen, what matters to you? What should I do in the event that something goes sideways? And he said, well, honey, I think if I could still watch football on TV and eat chocolate ice cream, I would be good for that with that level of living. Chocolate ice cream and football on TV. Well, first of all, she didn't know he liked football that much, but she thought that was an interesting answer. And what is particularly interesting to me about that story is that he knew that and was able to say that. So clearly he'd been thinking a little bit about this. So she has her answer. The next morning, her dad goes in for surgery. And as he's going towards recovery, they realize that her dad is bleeding significantly. And she's in the waiting room, and the surgeons call outside and said, "Your dad's bleeding. It's really bad. We have to take him back in. What do you want us to do?" And she said, "Well, what do you think will happen?" And they said, "We think he'll be paralyzed." And she said, "Would he be able to watch football on TV and swallow chocolate ice cream?" And you can almost picture the surgeon kind of taking that phone or like looking at the intercom and going like, "What?" And he responded, "Yes, we think he would be capable of that." And she said, "Then take him in and try and save him." Who made that decision in that critical moment? Did she, the daughter? Or did she just speak for her dad about what he wanted? And of course, I think the answer is she spoke for her dad. Because given her profession, she said later she might have been inclined to say, keep him comfortable and let him go. Because she didn't really want to be responsible for him possibly waking up paralyzed from the neck down or in pain. But she didn't. He was a good dad. He took that burden off her shoulders. And because they had that conversation, she knew what he wanted and she could speak on his behalf. So today, we're going to work a little bit towards you being able to articulate what is your football and chocolate ice cream bar for what you might say to someone if you were speaking shorthand to them about what matters most to you. So at our website, this is one of the homepage images. I hope it's still contemporary. You can see that we have a big bar across the top. There's a section that says Get Started, and that's where you would click on in order to find the various starter kits, including the one we're going to start with today. You can learn about us. We have terrific blog and lots of resources for you if you wanted to share this with other people as well. There's a section here about get involved, and we have all kinds of training for you if that's what you want, or videos that you can send off to family members, a couple of which I'm going to send to you today that might help break the ice. And so with that, I want to say that some people may have come to today thinking, oh, I'm here because I want to figure out how to get my mother to tell me what she wants. It's okay if that's why you came. But let me say something. The conversation starts with you. I invite you to take part in this work, for you to dive deep, for you to figure out what matters most to you right now, not in some unknown future, but with your health and well-being as it is today. Because you need to be able to understand that it's not always simple for that chocolate ice cream and football phrase to just roll off your tongue. It takes work. So when you want to be able to share with others, including your healthcare providers, you need to do a little work first and share you first. So we're gonna get started. Are you ready? And this is how it goes. Your starter kit has asked you to think about what matters to you. It's just a way of gathering your thoughts. So here's the first question I want you to consider and make a few notes about. What does a good day look like for you right now, in the body you're in the mind that you're in right now? So I'm going to pause and give you 2 minutes to write down. What does a good day look like for you? Is it spending time with others on your own? What do you need to enjoy a good life? Being able to walk in the woods? Being able to read a book? Able to go out and enjoy a delicious meal? Or simply to swallow? What does a good day look like for you? Okay, and please also think about what or who supports you during difficult times. Who or what can you rely on when things aren't going great? This may be aspects of your faith or your culture. You might have a pet that's just always there and knows when you need support. You may think, I have family, I have friends, but who's really there for me when I'm having a hard time? So just take a minute and write down those ideas, those people. These are things, these are people that matter to you. And with that little bit of a warm up to what matters, I want to give you time to try finishing this sentence. What matters to me through the end of my life is. What matters most to me about life, about living well, is. And you'll note we gave you a little prompt there, for example, being able to recognize my children, or being independent, simply being able to spend time with the ones I love. What matters most to you when I think about the end of my life, through the end of my life? Some people I've worked with over the course of years, people have written things from, I want to say goodbye to everyone I love, have one last look at the ocean, listen to some 90s music and go. Having my sheets untucked around my feet. Right? Right? Are you a sock person or a no sock person? You may not be able to tell someone at the very end. Let them know. What's important is that it's peaceful and pain-free, with nothing left unsaid. Well, some people say, I want to just be home. Others might write, I want to be in the hospital with excellent nursing care. So if you would, take just a moment, and if you feel like you could share, would you please type something into the chat about what matters most to you? This is a Wordle that was created from different answers that we got over time. And as you can see, so many people think, I just want it to be peaceful. I want to be surrounded by family and friends, dignified at home, easy for my family, quiet, calm, painless, filled with music. Julie, are you able to, are any things coming into the chat for you?
Thank you. Yes, I can read some of them.
Thank you.
Um, Being able to do Dharma practice, being able to help others, being able to continue my daily practice in a peaceful environment, to be able to express gratitude to those who have helped me in my life,
Mm.
to be able to practice the Dharma, peaceful and not in terrible pain, cool temperatures, cool water, ice.
Mm.
Peaceful, calm, maintain mindfulness and concentration on my practices. What matters most at the end? Being at home in a quiet environment where I can quietly meditate and offer mantras, surrounded by close Sangha encouraging me to rest in luminosity.
Mhm.
Letting go, peace, and Dharma music. Listening to and practicing Dharma pain-free, receiving good care at home, having lots of pillows around me. And the last one we have right now, oh, here's another. Peaceful, family with me, things said that need to be said without pain. Meditation environment. And then a good day looks like feeling lovingly connected to others, taking a walk on a beautiful beach with views of the spacious, infinite ocean.
Beautiful. Julie, thank you so much for reading that, and thank you all for participating this way. I think it's so wonderful to be able to hear one another's thoughts about such an intimate topic. And I want to also just kind of go back in a little bit. I love that someone was very specific about cool and ice. Not everyone would know that you like cool and ice as opposed to a warm someone else wants lots of pillows, very cozy, maybe that's even warm. Be careful, do you want down pillows, or make sure they're not down? If you're not able to tell someone, maybe they want to know ahead of time. And Dharma music, I love that someone brought up music, because I like to say that if you would like to be accompanied by music, then maybe think about your playlist and write it down someplace or create it for yourself, because the last thing you want is your 13-year-old nephew to make up your music list for you, right? You want to be specific about what would matter to you. And in terms of the practice, so many people shared that, being able to practice. So a couple of just notes about that. Just notice that that reflects for you something important, which is that you are able to attend, that your mind can attend to this practice. And if you've ever been in pain or been sick, you know that sometimes it's harder to do. Even my most beloved teacher realized when he was suffering from a very dramatic health issue. Um, he told us later, he says, I wasn't able to practice. So I was so grateful to the friends who came to my bedside and practiced for me and with, on my behalf, or reminded me where to go with my thoughts, because I couldn't do it myself. And there's not something wrong with you that you can't. It doesn't mean you haven't been a wonderful, devoted practitioner, but there are realities of the body that can take hold. So again, turning to your wonderful guide book, but also to your own knowledge. Make sure that you are communicating with people you know, even within your Sangha, perhaps. Like, would you be the person I can contact? Or I contact the Sangha, would you send someone to me? And perhaps that's something you already have set up as a network practice. Okay. So let's move into some more pragmatic questions. And this is you've got it there in front of you, or it's here as a question and you can make notes on your piece of paper. These questions are designed for you to think, to have a framework, because it's like a lot of times people say to us, well, I don't even know where to get started. Well, this is where to get started. Here are some good questions for you to consider. Where do you fall in this spectrum? When there is a medical decision to be made, I would like, on one end, my healthcare team to do what they think is best. On the other end of the spectrum is to have a say in every care decision myself. Now you notice we haven't rated these 1 to 5, like 1 is best and 5 is worst or vice versa. There's just a range of where people will fall. And it also is to highlight for you that you may be somewhere on one side of the spectrum, but when you're talking with someone else, they may actually have a very different perspective on this. So sharing, speaking, and listening. Where do you fall?
I'd like to bring up that previous to that question is another that says, as a patient, I'd like to know, and on one end of the spectrum is only the basics about my condition and my treatment, and the other side, all the details about my condition and my treatment.
Thank you so much, Julie. I think that slide got lost somewhere in translation. So that is the first question. As a patient, myself, I would like to know only the basics. Don't confuse me with all the details. Keep it simple. Or you may be the person who, on the other end of the spectrum, I want to know everything, all the details about my condition, my prognosis, my treatment, or I'm somewhere in the middle. Just for yourself, where are you? Another question that's important is, what are your concerns about medical treatment? I worry that I won't get enough care. That someone may look at me and think, you're old, you're female, you're a person of color, you know, they'll look at me and they won't give me all the care I need and want. Or I worry that I'll get too much care, that everyone's going to be all interventionalist about everything, but I have a perspective on this and I want to share it. Where are you when it comes to the amount of care you might get? And because this is a starter kit, today's practice is that we will just get some impressions of ourselves as we're doing this, and you will come back to it at some point and review it more deeply. Okay? This is not a one and done exercise. Here's a question. If I'm diagnosed with a serious illness that could shorten my life, I would prefer to, on one part of the spectrum, not know how quickly it is progressing or my doctor's best estimation for how long I have to live. I don't want to know. Don't tell me those things. Versus, on the other end, understand how quickly it is progressing and my doctor's best estimation for how long I have to live. Where are you on that spectrum? Because these are things that you will want to communicate, for example, with your healthcare decision maker or your healthcare team. But you've thought about it ahead of time before someone says, we have news to share with you. And then when it comes to your healthcare and what other notes do you want to add? And if you've thought about some things, just make some little notes here in this square, this rectangle, or on your piece of paper. I'll give you just about a minute to write down some other thoughts if you have them. And we're going to push on with these with these questions about, where do I stand? Where do I think I am on this? If you were seriously ill, this is the next question, or near the end of your life, how much medical treatment would you feel was right for you? And this is just saying what is true for you right now. I would want to try every available treatment to extend my life, even if it's uncomfortable. The other end of the spectrum, I would not want to try treatments that impact my quality of life in order to extend my life. Where are you right now? And I know the mind races forward into the what if scenarios, like, well, if it was now versus if it was in 5 years, or, and we will talk about that. That will, again, this is the starter piece. Some of these questions are designed to also provoke that thinking about the future, because you are human and we wonder about all these possible scenarios. But for now, just to settle in, what would be your impression of your own self? And then, where would you prefer to be toward the end of life? I strongly prefer to spend my last days in a healthcare facility, either in a hospital, assisted living, or nursing facility. Or I strongly prefer to spend my last days at home. And as you think about that for yourself, I want to reiterate, none of these are yes or no, right or wrong answers. These are only what's true for you. And I know I hear all the time about people prefer to spend their last days at home. So many people say that. But I will just be the person who stands up and says, actually, I don't. I don't. I would really, really like to be in a nursing facility, or preferably a hospice facility that was residential. Why? Because I've been a caregiver for a lot of years, and I would prefer that not be what I pass on to the next generation, as much as it was a privilege for me to do. Okay. Also, as a nurse, I like nurses a lot. And when I can't do for myself, I will be really happy to have a nurse keeping me clean and dry. So that's just my 2 cents on that, not to sway anyone. That could also happen at home with a good care team and with loving family and friends. No question. So you've kind of gotten your impressions about this, and I want you to look over your answers. And what do you notice about the kind of healthcare you said is right for you? And if you can, see if you can summarize that into a sentence or two, or some bullet points that you would want to be sure to communicate with someone. I'll just give you 2 minutes to try to summarize, because what you can't really do in communicating with people is say, well, I'm on the left side of the spectrum of all these answers, because they don't have that in front of them necessarily. I mean, you could show them your workbook, but if you could summarize, that's part of the conversation, the communication. What kind of healthcare, what degree of intervention or non-intervention is right for you? I see people still writing. So just another 30 seconds perhaps to write down. You can come back to this, of course. Does anyone want to take a stab at sharing a summary statement with us in the chat? And Julie, if you see anything coming through, would you share one or two or three with us, please?
The one that we have right now is a request not to extend death.
Hmm.
And I think that person may have thought or been thinking not to extend life beyond one's ability to probably be conscious. I don't know.
Okay.
Another is I'd appreciate being and dying at home with support for practice and enough intervention to stay as comfortable as possible with the companionship of close friends and or family.
Lovely. If you were to hear that expressed from someone you care about, would that matter to you to know if that's what they want? It's um, pretty clear in terms of expressing a preference, right?
Here's another,
Okay.
a couple more. I would like to die at home without terrible pain, with the support of palliative care or hospice, with simple interventions without extending life.
Thank you.
And another is I would like to be at home if a good caregiver is available to keep me warm and dry and to play my Lama's voice or other Dharma recordings.
Mm,
I would like to I would like pain meds, but not to the point of making me groggy or dull and unable to think clearly.
beautiful. That expression to someone who is your care team on the healthcare side or your personal care team would be so important for them to know. In order for you to have your expressed wishes respected. And that's really our big goal, right? We want to be able to express our wishes that they may be respected. Okay, thank you. I'm going to carry on because there's still more to cover. A few more questions in this realm. If you weren't able to speak for yourself, would you want people to follow all your wishes or do what they think is best in the moment? Your answer might be along the lines of, I want the people I trust to do exactly what I've said, even if it makes them uncomfortable. To the other end, I want the people I trust to do what brings them peace, even if it's different from what I've said. For me, this is a very provocative question on the level of ethics and what matters most to me. Is it that I have control and people will do what I asked? Or do I want people to be able, who are left behind, to feel peaceful about the decisions that are made on my behalf? Challenging. I think this one question, more than any other, kind of gets us into a deep conversation about the what ifs. Um, but think about for yourself. I want the people I trust to do exactly what I've said, even if it makes them uncomfortable. I want people I trust to do what brings them peace, even if it's different from what I've said. And of course, again, it's a spectrum. You may be someplace anywhere along that spectrum. When it comes to sharing information about my health with others, I don't want those close to me to know all the details about my health. So this is a matter of like who owns the information and who gets to share it. And on the other end, I'm comfortable with those close to me knowing all the details about my health. Our next question is, or reflection is when I die, I want to be alone. Zip down to the other end of the spectrum. I want to be with other people. This is a matter of, for some people, a matter of practice. For some people, it's a matter of just a preference. For some people, it's a matter of experience. I mean, as a nurse and a hospice volunteer, I've watched people be surrounded by their loved ones for days and days and days and days. And then everyone leaves one day to go down to the cafeteria. And when they come back, their loved one has died. And there's so many thoughts about this, right? From the dying, the death perspective. People think it was too hard to leave when you were in the room. You know, I couldn't leave you, but when you were gone, I could go. I could let go because it would just be easier that way. You know? And others I've seen hold on for days until someone got there that they were waiting to see. And then they were able to let go. So it's something to reflect on. This is, again, a very profound investigation into the nature of mortality, living and dying. You know, you do this in your practices. I like to remind some people when I'm doing this work that many people have been doing this since they were children, wondering about this. I grew up in an ethnic Catholic family, and we had prayers before we went to bed. You got down on your knees and you said, you know, God bless mommy, God bless daddy, and you go through the whole list of people. But there was also a little prayer that was, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. I don't know if any of you had that prayer when you were little, but maybe when you were 6 or 7, you didn't realize you were contemplating the reality of your mortality, but actually it was it was the first step in that process. If I die before I wake, always a possibility, always being prepared. Have this day be a good day. Say the things that need to be said. There's a wonderful book by a palliative care doc named Ira Byock, and he has a longer book and then he has a shorter book, and I think it's called The Four Most Important Things, and I think it's instructions for living and dying is the way I interpret it, because he says to die well you have to be able to do 4 things. Say 4 things. Thank you. Forgive me. I forgive you. I love you. And I think that if we could imagine saying those 4 things each day to the people who matter most to us, or, you know, periodically even, when it comes time to die, we will die well, because there will not be a lot left unsaid if those are encompassed in our thank you. I forgive you. Please forgive me. I love you. And goodbye. There's a box here that people can fill for helping you get closer to really summarizing this. Is there specific information you would want or not want shared with certain trusted people? Like someone may be your healthcare proxy, but you may still want to say to your doctor, this is information I don't want passed on. Or someone very close to you knows this, and there's someone else in the next little sort of circle of life around you, but you're like, okay, this information goes this far, but not any farther. Something to think about. You've been diagnosed with breast cancer. Who gets to know that? Who do you want to know that? How far out the circle does it go? I mean, some of us want everyone kind of on our team when this is going on. And I know people who said, there's one person who knows, and that's my spouse. I'm not even telling my children. And she got through the whole course of treatment working, And she didn't lose her hair, so that was easier to kind of cover up. But she never wanted people to know. I thought that was very. It's we have see. I kind of like went, oh, I just don't get that. But see, that's a reminder to me. We're different. We have difference, so we can't assume everyone wants what we want, right? That's why there's this spectrum, because people have different thoughts, different feelings, different perspectives. And this is like your summary box to get to work on this, okay? You're going to look at all your answers and you're going to see that there are themes emerging. There are the most important things for your family, your friends, your healthcare team to understand about you and what matters most to you through the end of life. And when you kind of get to this box, you're getting really close to your chocolate ice cream and football summary statement and more specifics. And quite, I don't mean, it's not a joke, but for him, that was a way of summarizing. If I can watch football, I'm conscious enough to understand how this complicated game works, right? If I can swallow chocolate ice cream, I'm still enjoying simple pleasures in my life. My body's working well enough to swallow and enjoy. So this one you may not be able to, you may be able to make some little bullet points now, or you may have a sentence or two. But what I'd like to invite you to consider doing is after we're done and in the maybe sometime tomorrow or certainly within the next week, you'll come back to this workbook, to these questions, and, get yourself a cup of tea or something stronger if that's your preference, and sit with this and work through this a little bit more. And you may find that, oh, when I was on that call, I put this, but actually really what I mean is this, because this also changes over time and with situations. And we're going to talk about that next. I'll give you another minute or though to just, if you want to make some notes here for yourself. So when you come back to it, you can work a little bit on the summarizing part. So we kind of warmed up with thinking about a great day and who's there to support you. And we dove down a little bit into some really key questions about healthcare and your preferences when it comes to serious illness or dying. And again, these may not be all the questions in the world, but they're the ones we found through many iterations of this starter kit are helpful in framing the conversation. But now I want to talk to you about talking to people. And this is, again, just to get your brain sort of revved up and thinking about, so who needs to know what matters to you when it comes to your health care and what you want and what you don't want and who you want to share it with and what's important to you. And here's a little list. It's a long list, actually. Who in your life, do you need to talk to? And for some of you, it's parents or a partner, a spouse, your chosen family members, adult children, perhaps a faith resource person, a faith leader, your minister or priest or guru or lama, right? Your rabbi. Are there friends that are really important for you to start, introducing this conversation? Give them the gift of this conversation of knowing what matters to you and getting them to think about it for themselves. And then your healthcare team. Who's on your healthcare team? Who are your key people that need to know, that you'd like them to know? Okay. And I want to just say, it's not, if you have, I think of it as people who have a vested interest in your care and the quality of your life, right? For some people, the easy model is adult children, right? You think about, oh, I've got kids. Who am I going to tell about my wishes? And my considered advice to you is you tell all of them. even the ones that maybe you haven't seen for a couple of years. And I'll tell you why. When I was a chaplain at a major hospital, I was on call one night and I got called up to the ICU by the security guard. I'm thinking, why are you calling me? I'm the chaplain. You do this. There were two sisters who were fighting in the family waiting room. And the story was there was a mom who was in the ICU, and one of the daughters had been taking care of her for a year. Lots of conversations over the course of her disease process. And this daughter knew what her mom's wishes were, and the decision had been made by this daughter to keep mom comfortable and let her die peacefully. But the sister, who hadn't been home in 5 Thanksgivings, had flown in from the other coast. And when she got there, she was like, no, wait, we have to do everything for mom. Because she had a lot of unfinished business, right? And finally, the sister who had been caring for mom said, but honey, she told me this is what she wanted. And the other sister said, she never told me that. So don't leave people in the dark. If you have serious conversations, you need to include all the people in your circle of care who have a vested interest in your well-being. Okay, now, where are you going to have this conversation? I want you to actually think seriously about making this commitment to yourself right now that you are going to have a conversation with at least one of the people on this checklist by next week. It could be a baby practice conversation with a girlfriend. Okay, but you're going to commit to yourself to have this conversation. They talk about, really high elite athletes, that one of the things they do is visualize. So like you're playing basketball, you visualize that ball going into the net and swooshing down into the basket. You're running a race. You visualize yourself crossing that finish line, feeling great, having something left over. You need to visualize where for you would be a good place to have a conversation with someone. And here's some ideas. We always talk about having these conversations at the kitchen table because that feels like a familiar thing. Not everyone has a kitchen table. So a restaurant, in the car, on a walk, video chats. It doesn't have to be in person, right? You can do this on the phone. We got these great video capacity now. At my place of worship, where else might work for you? I used to say that it would be a little bit like having a sex conversation with my kids, where they're in the back seat and I'm 60 miles an hour down the highway. Doors are locked. They can't get out. This is how we're going to have this conversation. So this may not work for this conversation, but it may be a starter place. We're driving. I want to talk to you about something. No one can get out. And we're talking about me. I'm telling you what, me. And the reason I said by next week, because we at Conversation Project work in a quality improvement environment. And, soon is not a time. And it always seems like it's too soon until it's too late. Right? So let's not wait. You were serious enough to get on this call. You care enough about this for yourself. Make that commitment to yourself that you will have this conversation. So go ahead and pick yourself a date. Pick yourself a person. Imagine where that could take place. And just make a note. This is my commitment to me. So to help you, a little humor is good in this serious subject. So I want to just share a video that we made just to help you think about how you might get started.
Mom. Dad. Sweetie, can we talk?
Everyone, dies.
So, how do you want to go? Do you have a plan for your end-of-life care? Because I don't. don't take this the wrong way, but you're not getting any younger.
So I was binge watching Game of Thrones, which reminded me that everybody dies. Oh.
You've heard of a birth plan, right? It's like that. Only the opposite. I need your help with something. Can we talk?
My biggest fear is losing you, and that I won't know how you want me to care for you toward the end.
Remember what happened to Aunt Maria? I don't want that to happen to you.
You've taken care of me your whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of you.
I know that I've watched that for years. It makes me laugh and it makes me cry, right? But this, I love it that, I don't know if you got it, but they're all talking to themselves in the mirror. And it's this like, how do we practice this conversation? And I love that invitation is, I need your help with something. I need for someone to know this about me. Could I talk to you about this? So it's not like, Mom, I need you to tell me what you want. It's like, I've been thinking about this and I would like for us to talk about this for both of us. So when's a good time to have this conversation? When if there's someone in your life that's turning 18 or 21, someone's becoming of majority and, or going off to college, you want to have these conversations and know that they have a healthcare proxy. And hopefully if you're a parent, it's you, because, they go off to school in another state and they have to have their appendix out and you're trying to call the hospital and get information. And they're like, I'm sorry, we can't talk to you because you're not their healthcare proxy and they're adults, You want to, we say sometimes, if you're old enough to get behind the wheel of a car, you need to have this conversation. I think it's a great birthday present for people to give to themselves and to one another. Like, let's have this conversation. And it's, as I say, it's not a one and done. You want to do this before there's a medical crisis, but maybe pick a birthday and say, it's my birthday. I want to talk about my death day or something like that. I know Ira Byack, who I mentioned earlier, when his adult children asked him what he wanted for Father's Day, he told them, I want to know that you have a healthcare proxy and what your wishes for care would be. That would be what I want for my Father's Day gift. So, major life events, college, marriage, children. Oh, divorce. If you've been married and your spouse perhaps was the person who was supposed to be in charge of things and now you're no longer married, make sure you review the paperwork. And we're going to talk about paperwork in just a minute. When someone else in your circle passes away, someone dies, it's a good prompt to say, if it were me, this is, it can be an instructive time. A major trip. I know we talked earlier, someone just went on a major trip and they got all that stuff organized before they went on their trip. What a gift to the family. Not because something terrible is going to happen, but it could. And you're prepared. And of course, when one is newly diagnosed with a serious illness, the stakes are higher and it's important to have that conversation. And for those folks who would be having that conversation, I'll be sharing with you that we have a guide specifically that helps get down to the nitty-gritty for someone in that situation. And you saw in the little film some icebreakers, we can call them. And they're in your guide, but here they are too. It's like, I need your help with something. I was thinking about what happened to so-and-so, and it made me realize that maybe I want that or I want it to be very different. So these are some questions that you can ask as icebreakers to get started. And let me say, sometimes you will be rebuffed. Oh, the children who will say, oh, Mom, Dad, you're not going to die. They actually say, like, I don't want to talk about that. I can't. But you can, and again, it doesn't have to be a big conversation. You might be clearing the table together some night or making a meal together, or going for a walk and say, I just thought about something one day, just the other day, I was thinking about this thing. And you drop these little gems into your conversation along the way because you've done your prep work and now you know there's something you want to share. And it doesn't have to be a big, substantial, significant conversation. It can be something that happens over time. I took care of my mom in the last 3 months of her life. And at one point she said to me, honey, I really admire what you've been doing in your work. It's really important. It's really good. She said, but we really didn't have to talk about it this much. So, maybe you don't want to overdo it like I did. And some other tips from the field, I think we've talked about this already. Practice conversations so that when you have to have that real one with the person that's most important to you, you've gotten your thoughts organized a little bit. You don't have to talk about everything all at once. And then nothing you say in these conversations is permanent. Things change. That's why we say, talk about it when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 50, during these different changes in life. And if you're not able to have a conversation with people, you just keep getting put off, but you really want this shared, letter writing is a beautiful thing. Emails are a beautiful thing. Send it off, or even fill out a copy of this little pamphlet and send them the whole thing. It's free, online, downloadable. You can make copies and send it off. Everybody doing okay? Maybe just take a big stretch, because I want to move into something that is also moving into action. I want you to feel like you've got a plan about what's happening next for you after the first conversation that will be many conversations. There are two, and I'm not a lawyer, okay, but I want to say that there are two documents I encourage you to have. And if I only have one, the one I really encourage you to have is your health care proxy. In different states, it's called something else, but it comes down to it is the person who can make decisions for you in the event that you're not able to speak for yourself. It is a document that allows you to name that person and an alternate choice as well, in case that first person can't be reached. And it is a piece of paper that goes into a healthcare file, but you also have a copy for yourself, and you share a copy with the person you have asked first whether they would be your healthcare proxy. I know that in Massachusetts, you can just go online and you can download a document. You do not need a lawyer in most states to get to name a healthcare proxy. So it just is, you name the healthcare person, you get it signed, and you get it witnessed by two people who are not the person who's the healthcare proxy. And in different states, it can also be not the person who's like the healthcare provider, like say you have a home healthcare aide. So you have to just look in your particular state, but please, choosing your person is important. And we're going to talk about who that can be or who that doesn't have to be in just a minute. But the second part is something, again, this is a broad name for it, is your living will. It is an advance directive that helps you describe your preferences for your wishes for care. And this is something I'm not going to get into today, but is something you can read more about online. You can talk with a lawyer. You can talk with your healthcare provider about the different ways you can memorialize your wishes in writing in a document that will be cover some of those more difficult and complex decisions, such as when to have or to stop, whether you want artificial nutrition, for example, whether you would want to be resuscitated in certain circumstances, whether you would want to ever be on a ventilator. I mean, this became a very real conversation for us during COVID, and some people thought about this already, but it's something to review and investigate for yourself. there's I'm just going to mention it, but I'm not going to go into it right now. And this is something you may want to talk about in another entire session, Julie, with your team, which is a PULST. And I know you mentioned it in your guide book. PULST is a physician's, it's a funny acronym, Physician's Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, PULST. And this document is something that you fill out with your healthcare provider, in which you discuss let's say you have an existing health condition that if it were not treated, or if it were to proceed, you could die from this without treatment, without more medical intervention. That's kind of at the point where you're very old, much older. This is the time when you would start having a pulse, and you would discuss all these what if scenarios. But again, that's not something we're going to get into, but I do want you to be aware of it. Is that okay if we just leave it there for the moment? Okay. But let's talk about healthcare proxies. We have a guide on our website for your choosing a healthcare proxy. So who would you want to make those medical decisions for you if you are unable to make them for yourself? And this could be because you had a fall, or you took the wrong medications, or you had surgery. So that's when a healthcare proxy could step into your life. So it doesn't mean that you're of serious advanced age or serious advanced illness, but you still want to have someone who might have to be called on, like that daughter was for her father. He was going into surgery. He couldn't speak for himself because he was under anesthesia still when the bleeding started. But she knew how to make that decision. So who does that person have to be? Who can play that role for you? Now, I want to just say I'm aware that this conversation can sometimes be a button pusher for people who live alone or are estranged from family. So I want to honor that. I want to acknowledge that. And there are ways to work with that too. And the pulse form is one of them, but that's in extreme situations. But, there is someone who could be that. It's maybe within your own community. When I was a minister at the First Church in Boston, there were two women who took a class I gave, and they were like, we don't have anybody. These two women, I knew them well. They were single. One was estranged from her family. One was an only child. Her parents were deceased. And they're like, who can be my healthcare decider? And what I had noticed was these two women sat next to each other in church Sunday after Sunday. And I said, do you think that you, as a spiritual friend, could do this for each other? And they had a conversation about that. And they did become each other's healthcare proxy. And I still hear from them every year. They send a little email saying, we just reviewed our wishes with each other. And this is 15 years ago. So we talked about tell more than one person. You don't want that person flying in like a seagull and kind of making a mess everywhere. Tell more than one person. I'm going to skip the rest of these for the time being. Instead, I'm going to show you another little video, which I hope is instructive and helps, again, lighten the mood.
Be your healthcare proxy? Like if you need someone to tell the doctor what to? I just go with whatever the doctors say. I wouldn't want to bother them. They're so busy. Doctors know best, right? Be your healthcare proxy? Sure, I'd be happy to. If I'm in town, check out my Instagram pics from Peru. Wish you were here.
Oh, I could never let you go. I can't even throw a plant away. As long as it's got one little green leaf. I'd be like, can't we upload her to the cloud?
Well, heck yeah! I've given this a lot of thought. Let me tell you what decisions you're best off going with. You never let them resuscitate you. And if they even try to hook you up to one of those breathing machines, never! I got this! I totally got this!
How can you even talk about this? I can't, okay? I just can't. Mom, it's not like you're gonna die. No, I can't talk right now.
Oh wait, did I show you that meme from iFunny? The cat and the dishwasher? Oh my gosh, okay. So the cat's like, bleh. And then he's like, wow! Oh wait, sorry, what?
Well, hon, you and I have been through so much together. Here's what we'll do. We'll sit down, we'll get a cup of coffee, and you tell me what matters to you.
Well, it wouldn't be easy. I mean, I'd be sad, but I'd have your back.
I remember when we went through this with Mom, we really spoke for her. So I think I can do that for you. Let's talk about what you would want.
So I hope that gives you a little idea about, with a slightly humorous twist to it, you want to find people who could stand up to a complicated healthcare system and speak for you, push back if they need to. Someone who's going to be around to, as best as possible, or the backup person will be around to be there or to answer a phone and take those calls and make those decisions. You want someone who isn't so sure about what they want and want to impose it on you. We want to have these conversations so that being judgmental about someone else's preferences is something we tend to do as human beings, and we want to just suspend that judgment as much as possible when we're having these conversations and making those decisions on behalf of someone else. I, again, think if you were watching that film, you get that little catch in your throat when the tone changes and someone says, hey, I would have your back. Let's talk about what you would want. It's a relationship strengthening conversation. It's intimate, and it can be full of love, and it doesn't all have to be serious all the time, even though it's a very serious subject. So I hope that's the message I hope that film leaves you with. This is from one of the blog posts that we have on our website. Katie Butler is an author of The Art of Dying Well, A Practical Guide to a Good End of Life. And she has written a letter that's available on the website that she wrote to her people, her medical advocate, from the point of view that the thing that was very concerning to her was dementia. And, if she was in a position where she could no longer make decisions for herself, she's written this very clear letter to her that she shared with her family and was shared in her medical record. And can read this to you, but I think you can see it if you're on the phone. You might not be able to read it, so I'm just going to read it quickly. Where she says, "If you're reading this because I can't make my own medical decisions due to dementia, please understand I don't wish to prolong my living or dying, even if I seem relatively happy and content." Now realize she's writing this letter from the point of view of being not demented at this point, not declining cognitively in a significant way, but it's a deep concern for her. "As a human being who has the moral, legal, and intellectual capacity to make my own decisions, I want you to know that I care about the emotional, financial, and practical burdens that dementia and similar illnesses place on those who love me. Once I am demented, I may become oblivious to such concerns, so please let my wishes, as stated below, guide you. They are designed to give me comfort care. Let nature take its course and allow me a natural death." And then she's very specific about what she wants. So this is, again, someone who has spent a great deal of time reflecting on this as a moral, intellectual, and deeply spiritual concern. And she's giving her family and her healthcare providers the gift of being articulate about this. And this is actually another letter that is available on our website. It was written by one of our first advisors, Dr. Karen Boudreau. that she wrote for her family. And I like it so much that I've pretty much written this out, sent this to my kids. And it's terrific. And because we have time, I'm going to actually show you it. We made a video of it. I like videos. So here we go.
My letter's called Don't Panic, It's Okay, a letter to my family. If you are faced with a decision that you're not ready for, it's okay. I'll try to let you know what I would want for various circumstances, but if you come to something we haven't anticipated, it's okay. And if you come to a decision point and what you decide results in my death, it's okay. You don't need to worry that you've caused my death. You haven't. I will die because of my illness or my body failing or whatever. You don't need to feel responsible. Forgiveness is not required. But if you feel bad, responsible, guilty, first of all, don't. And second of all, you are loved and forgiven. If you're faced with a snap decision, don't panic. Choose comfort. Choose home. Choose less intervention. Choose to be together at my side, holding my hand, singing, laughing, loving, celebrating, and carrying on. I will keep loving you and watching you and being proud of you.
So, this is a point at which I might be taking us is about leaving at the end of our time. We have some more time still where we can have entertain some questions. But here's what I hope you will move on to, especially if you have to jump off for any reason. Please complete the starter kit, the starter guide. Take it, as I say, take it back, reflect on it some more, pick it up when you have a chance and a little more time, and to review it. See how you feel about those questions and your answers that you wrote so far. And remember, everything can be changed. Seriously consider picking your person who you will invite at some point to be your healthcare proxy, perhaps, or just to start practicing having conversations with someone who might be there to speak on your behalf. I can't emphasize enough about, I'm just going to stop sharing for just a second, because I just want to tell you a personal story about the importance of conversations. And something simple that could make a big difference in someone's life and then they're dying. One of my grandparents, my paternal grandfather, lived, as I said, all four of them lived with my parents, but he was the last one standing. And I lived in a city, a 7-hour drive away at the time. But I would come and visit. And one time I was leaving, I was heading to the car, and I stopped and I went back and I, hugged my grandfather. And I was crying, and he said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm so worried when I leave. I worry that I won't see you again." And he was about 85 at the time. And he said, in his strong Italian accent, he said, "Oh, I'm not going to imitate it, but don't worry. Don't worry." He says, "I'm an old man. I've had a good life. I'm not afraid to die. So," he said, "if I don't see you, I'll see you." Kind of like reassurance and theology all in one little sentence there. Well, fast forward 8 years, and I am visiting my parents again. And I'm sleeping in the room next to my grandfather's room. And in the middle of the night, I hear him call out. And I think he's calling for the dog. So, because sometimes he'd get up in the middle of the night, let the dog out, and then I'd have to call the dog back. But he wasn't saying Bo, which is the dog's name. He was saying Joe, which is my father's name. But I got up and I went to him and I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I'm cold. I'm cold." I said, "I'll get you a blanket." And I went and I got my mother, and the two of us were nurses, and we took a look at him, and he's 93 years old, and he's very cold, and he's getting this look in his eye, and we looked at each other and we thought his heart was failing. So my mother stayed with him, and I went to wake my father. It's the middle of the night. And I said, "Dad, you have to come. It's time for Grandpa to die." And I mean, that's a terrible way to wake someone up in the middle of the night, but it's what I did. And he said, "Call 911." And I said, and I just took his hand and I said, "Let's not call 911. And I explained to him what would happen if the EMTs had to come and if they took him to the hospital and what they would do to him. And I said, "Look, he's had a good life." And he told me, he's not afraid to die. I think we should just go be with him. So my father gets up. He goes and he's, kneels at the side of my grandfather's bed. Meanwhile, I've gone and I've called my uncles. I have two uncles living in the same town. I call them in the middle of the night, and they came. And it was like a movie, right? They're standing around, and my grandfather does that thing like in a movie, takes a breath, and that was his last breath. And the only thing that changed the moment of panic was I was able to say to him, "Grandpa told me I've had a good life and I'm not afraid to die." It was no medical decisions, right? It was what mattered. And this mattered so much to my dad to have that peace, to know that. So I just want to tell that story as a way of, it doesn't have to be everything, it doesn't have to be complicated. It has to be that conversation about, "I love you so much. I worry that I won't see you again. What do we have to say to each other?" That could be in that moment the thing that brings peace to everyone. So I'm just going to take a breath here for a second with you. And I want to pause and see if there are comments or questions that you have in this moment that you would like to add into the chat. And Julie will read for us, and we can try to address in the few minutes that we have before we start wrapping up. Julie, are you seeing any questions coming in or comments?
Yes, we do have. When someone is reticent or just refuses to discuss this, particularly one who is close to or who lives with a family member whose health is compromised, what is the best way to work with this?
Well, it's all about the relationship that you have with those two people, right? So without knowing that, but I would say, if it's someone that you're actually close to, the non-talking person refusing to talk about this, I think the most you can do, or the best you can do, might be to start dropping things off for them to read, or dropping in conversations that you've had with someone who, like my grandfather's story. Do you have a story that you can share with them? But the other thing is, perhaps if the person who has compromised health and you're close to that person, is to maybe have a conversation with them about, if you feel like, I'm someone, I see that you're how you are. And I want you to know I'm someone you can talk to. I'm not afraid to have this conversation with you. Or whatever your opening questions might be. Is there anything on your mind about how we will take care of you, or how you would like to be taken care of? and then use an example from your own life. Like I watched this video and, or I was on the Zoom call. And one of the things that was so funny, it struck me like, do you want your sheets tucked in tight or do you like them to be loose? Funny little things like that. I wonder if you want to share those with me in case we need to take care of you more. I don't know. How does that sound? It's a tough thing depending on your relationship, how to insert yourself, because there can't be that bullying of like, you have to have this conversation. I mean, some people never have this conversation. And depending on the closeness of your relationship and your commitment to the person who's ill, how courageous and how interventional do you want to be about this? Mm-hmm. And are you able to be? If it's someone you're observing, it's a neighbor, like, oh, they're just not talking about it. Well, we don't really know. But I think if you have that question, you do know, and you're worried about them.
Okay. Another question. This is similar. How does a family member work with the spouse who's in charge as medical proxy when they don't want to talk about the situation?
Again, I think it's the gently dropping those ideas in about, George, I know you're Martha's healthcare proxy. Like, you have to make decisions for her. And I took this class and I wonder, do you know what she wants? Or because sometimes we think we're going to make the right decision at the moment, but if you want to talk about that sometime, I'd love to share with you what I learned, or have the conversation started, get ready to share with them, or even the letter, Boudreaux's letter. And again, going to the person who is ill and saying, I know that he's your healthcare proxy. Do you feel he knows what you want and will make good decisions for you? Because, it doesn't have to be your spouse, be your healthcare proxy. My husband used to be my healthcare proxy. And then I started doing this work, and I heard from this woman who said at one of the workshops, she said, oh, no, he couldn't be my healthcare proxy. He's the guy who's going to sit there holding my hand and weeping because he's so sad. So he can't make those decisions for me. I thought, oh my gosh, that's my guy. He will be terrible as a healthcare proxy. He wouldn't know what to ask. He'll be like so upset. He's not my healthcare proxy anymore. And I've got my very cool, collected daughter who's like, and if someone says, oh, we can't do this, she'll be like, oh, yes, we can, so and I've got 3 kids. So I chose one, and then I chose another one as the backup. And then the third one was like, what am I, chopped liver? And I'm like, no, but you have demonstrated to me talking to doctors is one of your least favorite things. And when I ask you questions about, so what did they tell you? You go like, I don't remember. So that won't work with your healthcare provider sisters. You won't be able to give them the answers that they need. So it's just sorting this out. It can't always be your spouse or your next of kin or even your kids or your oldest kid. It's not like a rule. Okay.
Post forms on refrigerators need to be communicated to families, so if 911 is called, the form is there. Any thoughts?
Oh, most deaf. Yes. If you have a pulse form, I would recommend you make copies of it on pink paper, or if not, just either color in or just tell your family, this is my pulse form and here's where it is. I have a refrigerator that magnets don't stick to. So I have a whiteboard in the kitchen and that's where it is. And everybody knows that that's where my spouse's pulse form is. And yes, here's the thing. If there's someone like caring for you or your loved one and you're not the person who's there and you know everything, but you've got the pulse form. Well, let me do it this way. I have someone who's a companion for my spouse who comes in, and I've said to them, look, this is the pulse form. Let me explain this to you. They were familiar with what it was. And I said, I understand that in the moment, someone might panic and call 911. That's okay. That's support for you. But then you hold this up and you show them saying, I have this, I just didn't know what to do. Okay, so I think yes, it needs to be there, and you need to have shared with people what it is and why it is. And it's part of the conversation.
And I'd like to add to that, when you have more than one post on your refrigerator, and you are, for instance, going to the hospital in an emergency situation, make sure to read whose name is at the top of that post.
Oh, wow.
My personal experience is my husband had a major stroke. We didn't know how major it was, so he did go to the hospital, but he asked to die at home. And when I got there, I realized I had grabbed the wrong post, and I had to go home and pick the other one up, pick his up. And during the interim, they did invasive tests on him. And then I had to really go to the bat with the doctor in the ER to let him go, because hospital policy is to keep the person there, even though that's not a legality. So you
Right.
really need to have that correct post with you at all times.
Right. Yes. So there are so many special circumstances. Having a pulse is a very useful document, and I never actually had thought about that one before. I want to mention one more thing because I know we're getting close to our close. Back onto the website at theconversationproject.org, you can find, as you've done, the basic conversation starter guide. But I wanted to be sure to also mention, because this is of personal concern to me, is that we have a guide for caregivers of people with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. There are many forms of dementia, as you know, cognitive changes. How do you have this conversation with or about someone who has dementia? It's a challenge. This guide helps you think about the framework for that conversation. And it really goes back to this idea of the spectrum that we looked at earlier for every decision. And the difference is that may have one point of view, but our people may have other points of view. So it's keeping that person at the center of every decision that's made. What would mom or dad have wanted in this situation? Even it may be different from what I wanted. There's also a guide that was designed to help families that are caring for a very sick child. So pediatric situation that's very different, very difficult. But again, all these are available on our website. You can scroll through them. They're available in different languages, so you can share them with friends for whom English is not their first language. These are then printed up in kind of a classy little form. You can have these printed for your organization and with your own logos on the back if that's something you wanted to invest or got a grant for. But you know what? This paper version works great because you can scribble on it, make notes. You don't feel so committed to like writing on the pretty paper, I think. But all those forms can be downloaded that way.
We have one more question that I'd like to include quickly because it's, I think, very important. When we identify a person to be our proxy, would it be wise to have more than one person, like the first, second, or third, because the first person might not be available?
I think that most healthcare proxy forms will encourage you to have a first person and a second person for sure. And I think that there's absolutely no reason not to be able to add a third, because in our busy lives, does everyone pick up their phone? That's the other reason my son's he never picks up his phone. But yes, you could have at least two, and you can certainly include a third person in that conversation. I don't know how you document it. You'd have to just kind of check in your state.
And then we just had one final question come in. I've been estranged from my youngest daughter for many years. We are only now beginning to have minimal email contact. She only rarely responds. She's holding a lot of anger toward me. Any suggestions about breaking the ice and being able to discuss these important things.
Why is it that we're only as happy as our most unhappy child, right? I'm so sorry. And I'm so glad that you're thinking about ways of re-entering into conversations. And it might be that a letter is the way to go. I mean, an actual, real, get one in the mail letter if you have an address for her. And express those things that are in your heart and your wish for connection. Um, Even if it's like a baby step that you could each take. I wish you well with that. And I will say just quickly, there are situations where it is almost impossible. I know a woman who's a lawyer and she is Jewish. Her daughter and her son are Jewish, but her son has moved to Israel and has a very Orthodox practice. They have a vast difference in their points of view on end of life care. She went to the extent of making her daughter, not only making her healthcare proxy and communicating with her son that the daughter is the healthcare proxy, she made her son sign a contract that he would not interfere in any decisions that the daughter made on her behalf, because she was very concerned that he would consult his rabbis who might say certain things that would be against the mother's wishes. And he had to sign that a legal contract because it was such a difference. So families are complicated.
Mm-hmm. And it's also so important to actually have these notarized.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to add that.
And then going back to the pulse, the pulse, it says medical is physician orders for life-sustaining treatment. It is effectively a medical order. So this is your wish. These are your wishes written down in your record, and they must be followed in your state. And they are transferable now across state lines.
And they need to be signed by your doctor.
Yes, you need to sign it, and your doctor needs to sign it. Yes.
Well, Reverend Rosemary, this has been so helpful. Very meaningful, very moving, real, very real. And I'm so grateful that you've come and shared this with us because it's such a difficult thing for so many families. And we will be making a video available on our website in the future so that this can be accessed. And we so appreciate everyone that was here today.